We're meeting Dag Svanaes in Aarhus in Denmark. Dag is a professor at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology in Trondheim. Since the late 1980s, Dag has been teaching and doing research in human-computer interaction. And one of his main areas of interest is the philosophy of interaction. And in this interview, Dag will provide us with some of his main guidelines, which embody his approach to understanding interactivity. So, Dag, what are some of your most important guidelines for interaction designers?
I mean, to a large extent, Merleau-Ponty is part of the same tradition as Heidegger and as Heidegger's teacher Husserl, but they differ. Merleau-Ponty has a strong focus on the physical body. Mm-hmm. To Merleau-Ponty, the body of the user, the human being, is important. While Heidegger recognizes that people have a body, of course, I mean, people have bodies, but Heidegger doesn't really go into that. He recognizes that there is something in there, that there are some problems related to the way we have bodies, mm-hmm. and the sort of the bodily way we live in the world, the thing with left and right and up and down and sort of me and you, the physicality of life. To Heidegger, that is, he recognizes it, and it's part of his philosophy in a way, but it's not a topic, it's not something he sort of goes deeply into. While Merleau-Ponty was interested in a lot of different topics, but one of the things that he's famous for is his philosophy of perception, and the way perception colors our understanding of the world and our way of being in the world. Mm-hmm. And and one thing is that he said that perception is embodied. I mean, some of these philosophies, it sounds rather stupid because you say things like people have bodies. Oh, really? I mean, it's kind of strange. It's kind of strange. So I understand when people say sort of hello. Okay.
But it does make a difference.
It makes a difference, but it's a bit complicated to understand what was the problem.
Let's take a specific point of Merleau-Ponty's. He says there's no perception without action. Mm. We perceive through interaction with objects.
Yes.
So, if you take this, what would that mean?
So Merleau-Ponty wasn't really concerned about the interactivity, because that came some years later. Mm-hmm. I mean, things were interactive, but that was not his project. To Merleau-Ponty, it means that we perceive it by interacting with it. So when I have this object as an object, not as a light switch, but as an object, mm-hmm. when I perceive this object, I turn it around. I look at it from different angles. Mm-hmm. I perceive it. I touch it. So perceiving the object requires that I really I might even take it apart. Yeah. To perceive it in the sense that sort of getting more information about this object requires an active perception. Mm-hmm. I could of course just put it there and observe it, but even that requires a focus. Mm-hmm. It requires that I scan it with my eyes. It requires a certain way of perceiving it, and this perception is active. Yeah. I mean, if I was just wanted to sit down in the sofa, I would sort of observe that there was something there, but I wouldn't really see it. I mean, even if you took me deep into hypnosis, I wouldn't be able to tell you much about this thing because I didn't really see it. I just saw it as something that I had to sort of move away, yeah, because it was in my way. So it was just an object. But I can study it, and the more I study it, the more I see. Mm-hmm. If I wanted to sort of do an exercise on drawing, I could place this nicely here as if it was fruit, and make a nice drawing. Mm-hmm. And through the process of drawing, I would see new things. I would see the shadow, and I would see the way the rubber sort of cast a shadow on the plastic, etc. So the more I interact with it, but not in the sense of touching it, but just perceive it, the deeper I get into the richness of this object. So that, and also this thing that the moment I hold it in my hand, then my perception is integrated with my hands. So when I move it, my hands are part of the percepting apparatus. So I perceive it with my hands and my eyes. I move it around, I turn it. So I perceive it. I do it actively, to put it like that. And like, I mean, when you have kids, and if you sort of put this in front of a kid, a 2-year-old, who learn to speak, then he would say, see. It's interesting because kids, they say see, and the first thing they do after having say see, they take it up and they bite it. Right?
Yeah.
Because that's real active perception.
Yeah.
They don't sort of see like sort
from
of
a distance,
like sort of going to an art gallery and sort of observing it. It's not, that's not see, that's not perceiving. Perceiving is sort of really biting
feeling
it, biting it, and then you learn something about it, and you might even try to break it, and then you learn something more, and you learn that some things break and you can't repair it. But you sort of, the more active you are, the more you learn about the object. So that's the Merleau-Ponty perspective. And if you extend that into the digital, then you have the, not even that you have, you perceive the object, but to perceive the behavior, to perceive the working of this switch, I actually have to press it. So I have to do an active action. It requires an action. And that is just to see that it moves, but also if this was connected to a lamp, then I would see this whole system of the lamp and the switch, and I would perceive its behavior. But this perception requires action, and that is the interactivity part. So the interactivity of the switch is only available to me through action. So that's kind of an extension, my extension, or inspiration from Merleau-Ponty, to take it one step further, saying that you perceive the behavior, because the behavior is something abstract. It's there, but it's not available to you as an experience before you actually tried it out. And if you just showed this to someone who'd never seen a switch, they would never touch it.
No.
And they would never perceive the interactivity of the switch.
So if we take Merleau-Ponty's point of the perceptual field is personal, how would you use that as a guideline?
That is has something. I mean, one thing is concerning the perceptual field is that we it's often easy to forget that people have come from very different backgrounds, and that they will approach technology in very different ways. So the perceptual field is Merleau-Ponty's concept of the personal, the individual's way of approaching the world. And we approach the world, we enter into situations in different ways. And the way we enter into a situation is to a large extent colored by our previous experiences. So it's more or less the same thing as with Heidegger, that you have to understand the user, but you have to understand not only how the user will interpret the technology, but also how they will approach the technology. That is at least the perceptual field, how that makes sense for design. One of the important inspirations for me from Merleau-Ponty is the idea of intentionality. which is also part of Husserl, the teacher of Heidegger. The idea that when we perceive something, we always have a purpose and kind of intentionality towards the object. I mean, it's obvious that I say that when I lift this, it's my intention to lift it, but it's also intentionality at a much deeper level. So Merleau-Ponty studied a lot of, at that time, current research on perception, and some examples of people who had some brain damage that made them perceive the world in quite paradoxical ways. And from that he did some reflections. And one of the reflections have to do with the way we perceive things. And this is, today we can use eye trackers, and we see the way that people actually move their eyes, their eyeballs. And when we see something, we always see it as if it was through his pirate telescope. Mm-hmm. The way we scan objects we're not conscious of how we do it. It happens at the sort of millisecond level. And at this millisecond level, we construct the world, or we construct our world. So it's not kind of this passive reception of stimuli, as the cognitive science people would say. It's an active building up a mental kind of image of the world. And the way we do this is very individual. People see different things. People move their eyes in different ways. And because they move their eyes in different ways, they see the world differently. So this means that not only do people interpret what they see differently, but they actually see things differently. Mm-hmm. And this is for the visual, but it's the same for sound. It's the same for smell. We sort of the way we actively seek interaction with the world. Yeah. At a very, very, very fundamental level. Mm-hmm. And this is not something we're conscious of. This is part of being human. Yeah. This is what humans do. It's what animals do, actually. So, but it's important to understand that people live in different worlds. People have different worlds. Mm-hmm. Because they are different, and because they come from a different background, because they have different experiences, and that colors the way people perceive the world. Yeah. And that is some of the starting point for Merleau-Ponty, mm-hmm. which is much more detailed than Heidegger. While Heidegger Heidegger says the same thing. He says that we understand the world with reference to our backgrounds. This is the background that our individual background and our cultural background. But Merleau-Ponty goes more into the nitty-gritty of this. And so that's the intentionality thing, which is important because it tells us something about that when I build the user interface, I see buttons and I see sliders and I see text and I see some video, etc. But other people, different users, see different things. It's not only that they would interpret this text differently because they don't understand the word or something. It's simply that they see a different image. And this is important. And eye tracking equipment is very interesting here because when you do use eye tracking as part of usability testing, these things become very apparent. Mm-hmm. You see where people have photos, etc., etc. So this is one important use of Merleau-Ponty. Another thing has to do with the body, and this is more relevant, not so relevant when it comes to graphical user interfaces or web interfaces. But it becomes relevant when you deal with more physical objects like mobile phones and things that where the physicality matters. I'm doing a research project now with physiotherapists in the local university hospital, where we do participative design workshops with the physiotherapists and have them improvise rehab games, physical rehabilitation games for Nintendo Wii.
Mm-hmm.
And we can also look into the Kinect and the Move technologies, all these technologies that make use of the physical body, the game controllers.
Mm-hmm.
And then the physical becomes very, very important, because then you use your body, you have what often called full body interaction. And then it becomes very, very necessary to have some theory for how do people use their body in this interaction. And we have the physiotherapists improvise different exercises and think of how should these patients move their bodies. What is the difference between doing this and doing this? And then it's important to understand how is this body, the physical body, reflected in the computer. What is the virtual body in the computer, and how much of the virtual body should be made explicit for the user of the game, and how do we map the physical body to the virtual body and back.
Yeah.
And Merleau-Ponty has this concept of the lived body, the proper body, which is the body not as an object in the world. Like when I see myself in the mirror, I see my own body as an object in the world, but more my body as I experience it. And my body as I experience it is not an object. It's actually my way of being in the world.
Yeah.
It's through this body that I am in the world. And it's through this body that I express myself in the world. And it's through this body that I act in the world. But the body as such is transparent to me, in the same way as the light switch is transparent in use. Then also Merleau-Ponty say my body is transparent in use. I'm not aware that I have a body before it becomes a problem. If I break my leg, then I become aware that I have a body, because then it stops functioning as a body, at least for walking. So then you have a breakdown also of your body. But your body is transparent. So, for example, when we design these games, to what extent should we make the body explicit?
Yeah.
To what extent should the patients using the game be forced to reflect on their body?
What have you chosen to do?
What have we chosen? Well, we are in the early phase of this, so right now we're trying out some different approaches to this. But at least the Merleau-Ponty perspective gives up some terminology for discussing this. Like, for example, even before computer games, we talked to the physiotherapist and we asked them, to what extent do you use mirrors when you have people who have a broken hip, for example, and when they want to sort of do exercises, to what extent do you do that in a room with mirrors? And they said that, yeah, we are careful with the use of mirrors, because for some exercises, if we have too many mirrors, then they just watch themselves in the mirror and they become too concerned with their own image. Themselves as seen from the outside. So you stop feeling your body. You stop sort of reflecting on your body from sort of your lived body. You just, I mean, that would be the Merleau-Ponty interpretation of this. You just observe yourself. And I guess this is some of the problems with eating disorders, that people
yeah.
see themselves in the mirror,
Yeah.
and there's some misconception of this image of yourself. Something goes wrong in this understanding of what is my body,
yeah.
and how does it look,
Yeah.
and you're so concerned with how it looks and not how it feels.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. So a lot of the thing that Merleau-Ponty brought in is this idea of how it feels.
Yeah.
And this is also important when we build user interfaces or build interaction. Not only what it looks, but how it feels. So that's the Merleau-Ponty perspective on things. And a lot of interaction design is about having a sense for the interactive aspects of your product. So you need this sense for interactivity. Like when you do the visual thing, you need the sense for the visual. So if you want to be a good interaction designer for designing the designing interactive behavior, you need a certain feel for the interactive.
How do you get that feel?
How do I get that feel? And I don't know. I mean, I learned something from doing Tai Chi, doing these slow motions, really sort of getting the feel of moving very slowly. So doing martial arts, doing dance, taking instructions in dance and martial art, reflecting on your body, your posture, reflecting on rhythm, on the different, the whole slowness, fast, everything to do with sort of the kinesthetic dimension. So I suggest that maybe in addition to taking some drawing classes, interaction designers should do some martial art, or should do some Tai Chi, should do some ballet classes or something like that, just to get a feel with interaction, using your body and reflecting on what does it mean, how does it feel to move your arm, how does it feel to move your body, how does it feel to relate physically to other people. So not necessarily that they will use it directly in their design work, but that it becomes part of their perspective on things, part of the skills, part of their way of being in the world.
Yeah.
Like in the same way as designers see things differently, then also I guess ballet dancers experience things differently, or you have a different perspective, different way of relating to your body and to your relation to other people's body and your physical relation to objects. So simply to be able to reflect on these relations and get a sort of sense for these relations, I think would be useful. I haven't done any research on this, so I don't have any sort of numbers or statistics to back it. But from the Merleau-Ponty perspective, it makes sense to say that this perceptual field, this set of skills, will affect the way you approach problems, and it will give you new possibilities. It will open up the design space, open up for new ways of designing and new ways of seeing what's good and bad, and also new ways of seeing the details of a solution. So a new way of seeing interaction, feeling interaction. So develop your feeling. Simply, you develop the feel skills. Yeah, and developing skills, and that is something that comes out of the Merleau-Ponty, is that developing skills, even these basic skills like taking ballet classes or learning to draw or learning to sing or learning to a new sport, changes you. It not only changes how you interpret the world, but it changes you, meaning that it makes you a different person. I mean, it sounds a bit sort of too much, but it changes you at a very basic level, and hopefully it changes you in a way that enables you to do things better, like designing user interfaces.
Okay, so in your chapter you emphasize an interesting perspective, I think, because you say, when you're explaining a meaningful interactive experience, you write that a consequence of this theory is that it should be possible to lead users into interactions with the computer that are meaningful at a very basic level. The actions themselves can be meaningful. How do we design meaningful interactions with the computer according to this perspective?
Yeah. In the chapter, I used an example that I made some 15 years ago of this Mr. Peters button. So a button that has behavior, and when you click on it, it escapes you. So the behavior is kind of a metaphor for a personality.
Yeah.
So that's an example of using sort of the behavioral dimension of the user interface as a communication channel. So you communicate through the behavior of the artifact. But that's more kind of just a funny thing. But a lot of it is what you see, for example, with some of the new mobile phones, where you just the feeling of interacting with it is, there's some magic to, there's some beauty to the way it behaves. And not only the animation or the visual, but the way it reacts to your movements. So there's some quality to this interaction, and there's a lot of thinking behind this design. I guess the people who designed this interface, they really spent a lot of time doing getting all the details right for the way it should move. What happens if you move it slowly? What happens if you move it up and down? How long do you have to keep it on a button before it opens? And a lot of these things they're not, as a user, I'm not conscious of it. I don't reflect on it, but it just feels good.
Yeah. And
making interactions that feel good, that's the purpose of this focus on interactivity. But that's interactivity at a very close to the perceptual.
Yeah.
But to get to the feel. And in the early days of user interfaces, we often talked about look and feel. So we say that the user interface has a certain look and feel. And a lot of design has been about the look, to get the sort of the Windows 7 look, the Apple look, etc. But less has been invested on the feel. It's only lately that you really feel that designers have spent a lot of thinking and experimenting and sketching on getting the feel dimension right. And interactivity is about the feel dimension, the way it is experienced in use.
Yeah.
So that is a very very basic level, close to the way colors give you are important in the user interface, and the use of animations, the use of shadows, etc. So this total user experience is also to a large extent about the behavior, the feel.
Yeah.
What does it feel?
Thank you so much, Dag, for passing on your guidelines. And if you want to know more, you should have a look at our other videos with Dag, and you can also read his chapter at interactiondesign.org. Here you can also find more videos like this one, and you can find chapters written by thought leaders and inventors. Thanks for watching.